Have you ever had an emotion that overcame you seemingly out of nowhere? If so, you may have been picking up on someone's energy. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the different things that you may experience as you start to wake up and become more sensitive to energy. So, this is something that happened to me, and honestly, it kind of scared me just how much I was impacted by this. And if I was not aware enough of what was happening, I would have been, making some bad decisions, honestly, in some points. So, I'm going to share a couple of examples of what happened to me so that you can understand, and then we'll talk about different ways to recognize this and prevent you from having these experiences. So, the first example I'm going to share is when I was driving into work one day, and all of a sudden I just had this overwhelming sense of, I can't do this, I can't do this, oh my gosh, just this just crippling anxiety that just came out of nowhere. And I'm sitting here driving into work. I've taken the exit to, the road that I need to get on. I'm driving there and I'm just frozen with this, just horrible feeling. And I was like, I'm about to just turn around and go home. And so then I caught myself and I said, wait a minute, I was fine. And then all of a sudden, these feelings and thoughts came out of nowhere. And so once I recognized that, and then I realized, you know what, this is not my energy, I was able to let it go and continue going on to work. But I honestly was so overcome with this anxious feeling and just this, frantic, like I can't do this anymore, I need to go, that I was about to just not go into work that day. So later on, I was talking to a coworker and I asked her, I said, did anything happen to you this morning? And she told me a story about what had happened to her, and it was something that would have caused a lot of stress. But the only reason I knew to ask her was because I knew that she was somebody who was very energetically sensitive and who was also prone to anxiety. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of times is people that are close to us that also have, kind of anxiety, which is actually them picking up on energy, which is a psychic ability. And I knew that I was close to her. And so I thought, you know what? I just ended up picking up her energy. And, I was able to recognize it and to, not alter my behavior based on that. I was able to identify it and stop that from me, going back home. So that was one example. Um, Another example is where also was a coworker that had just started on our floor, and this person was very, I don't want to say mentally, maybe not 100%. I'm not going to sit here and say what they were, that's not my place, or I wouldn't say that, but I would say that there were, kind of uneven, unstable type of emotions. Um, and it was the kind of energy where you felt like nervous, kind of like feeling like you're walking on eggshells. Like it was that type of energy where you're like, I don't know exactly what this is, but it's kind of making me kind of nervous. So this person had started working on our floor. And, I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, that's how I feel when I'm around him. Well, I ended up, at home, and I just started having these frantic type of feelings where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't go into work. I haven't have to quit my job. I mean, it was very bizarre. Now, it's been several years since that happened, so I can't really put myself back into that place. All I know is that I remember, at the time I was talking to my husband who was involved in the psychological world, And he kind of helped me understand that I was probably picking up on somebody else's energy. And when I realized that, it made me mad. I was sitting here going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I let that person impact me that way. And so I was like, you know what? This is done. I'm letting go of this energy, right? So he explained to me later, he said, what's going to happen is that energy is going to end up going to somebody else. And he was right. Now, again, I don't understand some of this stuff that's happening. I don't know the psychological words of it. But what ended up happening was a coworker of mine actually ended up in the hospital. And she was also like me. This is a different person. She was an empath. And when I found out she went into the hospital, when she got back, I asked her what happened. And she said, I just started getting these feelings of, just anxiousness. And she said, I just kept on throwing up. And because she was throwing up, she was normally on a type of medication and she wasn't able to take the medication. And so that's why she went into the hospital. And I kind of explained to her, this is what happened to me, and I'm kind of wondering if this is maybe what ended up happening. And, so I shared that information with her. Um, but I mean, if you just think about it, for those of us that are empaths, we are constantly, picking up on other people's energy potentially and not being aware of it and letting it affect us. Now, we've all heard of the terms of, energy vampires and how people can be draining, and that is something that empaths definitely have to do. But when it comes to some of these other, types of emotions that are just very, very unhealthy, and they are, some that are actually making you change your behavior, those are the ones where it's like we really need to take note and understand that we are sensitive energy and that we are picking up things, and how, do we identify when this is something that is somebody else's and not ours. So I shared those two examples. And so one of the ways that you can tell or try to understand if it is your energy or somebody else's energy is you ask yourself, what was I thinking before this? And, how was my emotional state right before? So if it's something that is taking you from one normal kind of emotion and then all of a sudden you're feeling this something that just seems to come out of nowhere, that's a real strong indicator that you need to kind of walk through and go back and understand, like, what was I just thinking, or, was I fine? And then all of a sudden I'm in a panic. Those are a couple things to think about. And the other one is, if you are basically, you have a normal range of emotion. So I talked a little bit about this in one of my videos, and I'll link it down below. But it is in the book Ask and It Is a Given, where it talks about your normal kind of emotional range and how it's very good to understand what your kind of range is. And if you find yourself all of a sudden suddenly in a different range, then you want to ask yourself, okay, wait a minute, this isn't normally how I act or feel, so maybe there's something else going on. And one other example I will share is another time I had some individuals come over to my house because I was getting quotes for carpet. And this one person came over, and as soon as I saw him, I just got this bad vibe. I was like, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to buy anything from you. That's what I was thinking in my mind. But I went ahead, let him in, let him do his spiel. And then afterwards, it was like a day later, I just ended up going into this complete like depressive state. And again, because I'm aware of myself, I ended up probably in that state for like 2 days, where it's like very bad, like, why am I here kind of feelings. I mean, it was a very, very low state. And again, that is not normal for me. I do not normally go that way. So I had to think, and I'm like, wait a minute, this person was over at my house. I probably ended up picking up on his energy. And so That's another example. And another example where you may, and again, for that type of example, you can ask yourself, have I been in the company of someone new, or has somebody entered my house? And then the last example I'll share is a lot of times I will pick up on people's anxiety. And, I can give one example in particular where I was on an airplane and there was a guy that I could tell was a little bit frazzled, as we all do get when we're traveling. And he sat down beside me, and I could feel my heart rate just going up. Like, I'm sitting here like I could just sense myself like resonating with him. And I was like, okay, I'm going to calm down. I'm going to get my energy centered. And then I could see that he had also gotten centered too. So it's kind of like this transmutation kind of energy exchange that a lot of empaths naturally do. If our vibration is high enough, sometimes we end up taking on their anxiety and, we incorporate it into ourselves. But eventually, once you start recognizing it, then you can kind of go, okay, I see what's happening, and I'm going to, be proactive and control my energy. And so, what I want to say about as far as what this is about knowing energetic boundaries and emotional boundaries. And a lot of times, especially when you're going through awakening, most of us don't know about this stuff. And so, as we become more self aware and as we become aware of energy and energy exchanges, it's very important for us to start, practicing some energetic hygiene and establishing boundaries, emotional boundaries. And if you want to create just an energetic boundary, all you need to do is just imagine a bubble around you, and you can make it about like 1 foot wide. And I just kind of do that just automatically, like I'm shielded. I'm not picking up on other people's energy. The only energy that can come into my field is energy that is positive. And I will go into more of the actual techniques that I use to do energy cleansing and protection on other videos. But that's one simple way. But the other thing that really you need to be aware of is just to understand, become more aware of your own energy and your self-awareness, so that you pay more attention to your emotional state. And when you are in an extreme different state than you normally would be, that's when you really want to start thinking like, maybe this is not my energy. So that's it for today. So stay tuned. If you like these types of videos, I will have more to share. Thanks.